Yes.
All right, cool. All right, so this is the first class. It's an introduction to our space. And I think that this is really important to understand because it helps you to contextualize like just the environment that you're in. Before I go in, this is a little bit about my background. As I already said, I basically came here to be a teacher. Before I was teaching as a volunteer, and now this is the first time in my life in which I can teach professionally, which is something I'm really excited. My philosophy with Tanuki Tech is that I really wanted to be able to help everyone here. So to be able to help y'all effectively, I need to hear your feedback. So feel free to let me know, like, hey, we want to know this more, or can you make a class for this? I'm really interested in making something that's going to be worthwhile your time. I really want to value your time. So the agenda for today is we'll talk about we're not going to do onboarding stuff. Y'all have been here for, like 1 to 2 years. We'll talk about the industry that we're in. We'll talk about how digital businesses work. We'll talk about the different components of it. So I feel like y'all will already know some of this. So when we get to this section, feel free to just let me know. And then we'll talk about where GitLab fits in. So everything's targeted towards the conversations that we have. And the goal of this class is to be able to understand the space that we're in so that we can have better conversations with customers. So just a little bit about the technology industry. So who here has stocks? Okay, cool. So do you all have any US stocks, or are you mostly investing in like Europe and Canada and stuff?
Actually, I don't have stocks. I have the options from GitLab.
Same here.
Okay.
I have some.
I haven't.
I have some like that I did in Taiwan, but like it's still in Taiwan.
Okay.
But looking into Canadian RSP, which is like a Canadian thing, you put money in for retirement, but you can invest and you don't get taxed.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like a 401k in the US.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say is that you're in the hottest industry in the world, and I'm going to prove this to you. So obviously you make a claim like that and you're kind of just sort of like, all right, well, I got friends in banking, I got friends in finance and insurance, and they're making more money than I am. So how is that true, right? So just like some proof points, we're all about proof points here. So in terms of stock valuations, in the last 5 years, US stocks are up 50%, but US tech stocks are up 155%, so 3 times the economy for the US as a whole. Technology companies are the fastest growing. If y'all have been following the US stock market, it's almost at a record high right now. And the reason why is almost exclusively because of technology companies. So Amazon, Uber, these companies are the ones that are pushing the US stock market to record highs right now. Jobs in technology are some of the highest paying. So this graph over here is for the US, but obviously these are international brands. Facebook has a presence in Ireland. Google obviously has offices all around the world. But over here, and these numbers are a little bit outdated, right? So this is 2017. But one of the things I like to say is that this gap over here is only increasing. If you were to get the most recent figures, there'd be even more tech companies over here. And so this is just a ranking of all of the US companies by median pay. And as you can see, the top 4 over here are tech companies. You have to go down to number 5 until you find something outside of technology. And out of the top 7, only one of them isn't a technology company. And over here, you can see here's when you get into banking. You have to go down all the way to like number 11 to see like auto manufacturing. Yeah. But this is yeah.
I wonder like why Microsoft is not on this list. Like I felt like they're high, like on there, but they are actually missing.
I don't really know. That's a good point. Maybe because they hid their data or something like that. But yeah. So
my friend who works at Amazon and also Microsoft before, Microsoft is like lower paid than like a lot than Amazon, and Amazon give like stock, quite a bit of stock. Facebook is higher, but I believe LinkedIn which is under Microsoft, is actually, the salary is better than Facebook last time I asked them. So this could be just back in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So one of the questions that people ask me all the time is I show them this chart and they're just sort of like, great, I am down here. So like, you know, like how do I get to you know, like how do I get to some place that I want to get professionally, right? But this, I'm just going to show you some of my friends from Red Hat. This guy, he was an SDR. If you just go through here, if you are in any fast moving company or any fast moving space, that means that you constantly have new opportunities that are being presented to you. When there's a new opportunity that comes up, new manager, new whatever, then they're going to look internally first. And so over here, this is my friend at Red Hat. He was a SDR for a year. Then he made it into sales. Then he got promoted into another version of sales, and now he's a SAL. So this entire trajectory journey for him took him about 3 years to get to become a SAL. So literally like quadrupling the amount of income that he has in 3 years. And his story is really not that unique. So if you work for like a bank or a consulting company, you have to hustle and hustle and hustle. And maybe after 10 years, you might be like a director or something. But in technology, just because this space is moving so quickly, there's a lot of opportunity, which is something that's really great. And that's something that's really unique about GitLab too. If you look at a lot of the managers that we have in the SDR organization, most of them were SDRs like a year ago, right? And so all of that's opportunity for the people that are here. So now people will ask me like, all right, great, but like, why is that the case? And the reason why is because almost all innovation comes from technology. So if you look at just like historical companies like Standard Oil, Carnegie Steel, they did something new which brought change to their industry. And then that's the reason why they were so successful. If you take a look at all of these companies, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and just look at these innovators, almost all of them are technology companies. So just some examples in terms of logistics, Amazon's being super successful here. This is the reason why they're expanding so much. Zoom has obviously changed how we communicate. Over 50% of marriages in the United States are found by online dating. So Match.com and other things like that, changing how dating works. Artificial intelligence, if you've been in a Tesla recently, you know that their newer models, they can basically drive themselves, right? So the reason why tech is so successful is because this is where transformation is happening in our society. Point number 2 is something that I really want to talk about. Why is this the case? Something that's unique to the technology industry is that it's massively scalable. We'll talk about what that means, and has low barriers to entry. All it takes is an idea. And so what I mean by massively scalable is that if I'm Microsoft and I come up with like Microsoft Office, then the amount of cost that it takes me to give an additional license to a new customer is effectively $0. So I have all this manufacturing and engineering cost to create the product, but there's almost no additional cost for me to give a license to one customer versus a million customers. And that's really unique to the technology industry, right? So if you think about like, if I make, let's just say I'm in furniture manufacturing. So I buy raw materials, I hire workers and turn it into chairs and tables, and then I sell it, right? So if I want to scale up, my business is successful, I got to hire new workers, I got to make new factories, I have to implement better supply chain. But with technology, it can scale up at zero cost, which is something that is unique to the tech industry. Obviously, there's server cost and things like that, but this is part of the reason why the tech industry is so successful. The other thing is low barriers to entry. And that what I basically mean by this is that if I went into banking or consulting, I'd have to work really, really hard, get promoted in a year and a half, get promoted 3 more times, and then maybe I'm like a director or something. But if you think about the founders of Facebook and Google, these were all people that were like 20 years old. And so almost anyone can create something new and have it scale up and be able to make a new name for themselves. If you if you take a look at a list of all the most recent young billionaires, almost all of them are from tech. And the reason why is because there's low barriers to entry in technology. So we don't have an American audience here, but this is one of the most successful college football programs, and they win all the time. There's a lot of money in college football in the United States. What they do is they do virtual reality and biometric scanning as part of their competitive edge. And this is just an example of how digital transformation is doing something that's you wouldn't expect, like sports, right? But these guys are winning national championship after national championship. But what they actually do is you have to put on these goggles, and then it's basically will simulate plays, and then so you can get like 50,000 practice situations that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise because you don't have a live audience. But with virtual reality, people can see it. So do y'all know what this is?
It's like Home
Some
Depot.
kind of shop or like
warehouse automation.
Oh yeah, it's Amazon with the bots underneath.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay.
Amazon's all about supply chain logistics, right? So if I can run my supply chain 20% more efficiently than Walmart and these other US companies, over a 5-year time horizon, I'm going to grind you into the dust, right? This is going to be part of my competitive advantage. And so what Amazon does is they have these warehouses, these little robots. If you ever see them, go look them up on YouTube. But they actually go underneath these racks and move stuff around, and it's part of their competitive advantage, right? This is digital transformation. Facebook, founded by 4 people when they were in Harvard. So literally like 19, 20-year-old kids. They're all billionaires now. Zuckerberg is one of the richest people in the world. This only happens in technology. In oil, in finance, in insurance, in consulting, this never happens. For you to like basically get an idea and scale it up, it's unique to technology. And it also has to do with what we did here. So at GitLab, after 4 years, there were only 9 people in this business. Our latest valuation was I think $3 billion, right? So each of these people, in terms of their options, I'm sure that they have millions and millions of dollars of stock. And once again, this is unique to technology. No other industry allows you to have such a low barrier of entry, in the sense that it just takes a small number of people. I'll just give you an example. Like if I wanted to start a banking business, then there's no way for me to scale up this much, right? Insurance, consulting, no way for me to scale up this much. But in tech, if I have a good idea, I build a platform to do it, then this will allow me to reach a good audience quickly. So, all right, so major components. There's obviously more than 2 chunks to the tech industry, but the main 2 chunks are applications and data. We'll talk about this. Applications are, when we're talking to customers, it's almost always applications, but we got to talk about data as well, because that is part of the puzzle. And so when we're talking about applications, it's, like things in your phone, right? So web applications like Facebook, video streaming applications, Netflix, games for your phone. And fundamentally what these are doing is they're providing a service for a price, right? So if you want to play my game, if you want to stream YouTube videos without ads, then you have to pay me money, right? For data, all of your data is like stored, repackaged, and sold. So I don't know if you ever signed up for something and then all of a sudden you get all of this mail, or you get all of these LinkedIn requests from people about trying to sell you their service or whatever. And the reason why is because they sold your data.
All the time.
Yeah, it's really sketchy. Has that happened to y'all?
Yeah.
I think it happens to everyone.
Yeah. Google, one of the most successful tech companies in the world, they make almost all of their revenue off of your data, literally billions of dollars off of your data. And this is something that people don't talk about, and it's kind of scary, really. So let's actually just go into the application types by business. So there's different types, right? You have e-businesses, which are fundamentally marketplaces, right? It's a virtual marketplace. That's what Amazon is. You have things that are providing a service. So as opposed to a real service like plumbing or electrician, then you have some sort of movie theater as a service, which is like Netflix. Games as a service, communities, entertainment, and tools, right? So that's what GitLab is. So this is a space that we're in, and this is how people make money. when we're talking to people, this is what matters to them. They don't like, fundamentally, when I'm meeting with all these clients, I meet with directors, VP, whatever, I want to understand their business. I want to understand how they make money, what they care about, and their challenges for making money. And I think that that's really, really important. A lot of times we can get stuck in like, oh, GitLab does this and whatever. But if I'm talking, I want to talk at a high level to, you know, like senior directors, VPs. I want to ask them like, how does your business work? What's your competition? And how are you strategically driving value so that you can disrupt your industry, right? And we can help them get there. We can give them strategic advantages as part of GitLab. So this is what senior directors and VPs and a lot of people care about, right? They want to stand out. Everything's competitive. If you're Lyft and Uber, you're constantly checking out what your competitors are doing. We are constantly checking out what GitHub is doing. And it's a lot of these industries are winners take all, right? So when Facebook became successful, then Google Plus and all these other people, they got kicked out, right? So this is something that's really important. So how do you stand out? What's your competitive advantage as like any sort of e-business? Well, one, features, right? So if my website does more stuff, then that's important. And if I do that for a long enough period of time, then I'm going to get a larger market share than you. And eventually, if I do way more than you, then I'm going to get the entire market. Number two is user experience, right? So is my website really easy to use? Is it fun? Is it pretty? That really does matter. Speed, this is huge. People don't think about it. Security is also important too. So we'll talk about virtual storefront, obviously Uber versus Lyft. So do y'all have these in Europe, or is this mostly American?
We used to have that, but the taxi lobby was too strong. They get pushed out in Hungary and in Germany.
Don't have them.
We have an alternative called Cargo in Belgrade, actually, not in whole Serbia, but only in Belgrade, in the capital. But yeah, I know.
It was kind of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking if you all had it. I kind of just like cut everyone off. It didn't make any sense. But so it sounds like, but are y'all familiar with what these companies are? They're almost completely identical services, right? Fundamentally, it's just rideshare. But if you imagine if Uber has more functionality than Lyft for a 2-year time horizon, they're going to get 30% market share. They're a $4 billion company, right? So 30% market share is $1.2 billion. So it matters a lot to them. And it's basically an arms race, right? Winners take all market, social media, YouTube, like video streaming is fundamentally YouTube now, regardless of where you are. Google Chrome has 85% of the market share for browsers. Usually what happens is that one player gets so much better than everyone else, and they have so much inertia and just momentum that they dominate the market. So people don't want to get disrupted. This is scary for them. So the downside to technology is that you hear about the winners, you hear about the Facebook, you hear about the Google, but there's all these small guys that, you know, they're not successful because they get pushed out by these bigger guys. So so like, if you're a senior director, if you're a VP, this is things that you're thinking about all the time. So imagine that like you're a VP over here for engineering, right? You have 40,000 options in GitLab. You know that the 5-year price value for these stock, if we're successful, is like, I don't know, some large amount of money, right? So it's something that like you're really cognizant of, because you can bet your bottom dollar that like, you know, Microsoft, it's really like, if Microsoft's successful, then we will have zero value in 4 years. I don't foresee that happening, but it's just the nature of the market that we're in. I know that I've been going on. Do y'all have any thoughts or questions about what I've been sharing so far?
Yeah, definitely. It's I totally agree with the hottest market. That's why I was so fascinated by also Cloud Era. That's how I get into the tech, working for tech companies. And yeah, nobody knows MySpace anymore, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Don't want to be in
like,
MySpace.
Yeah, it's really different than my industry. So I was in mostly hardware IoT products. So you have to deal with a lot of hardware, and then you have to worry about price erosion. You have to worry about warehouse fulfillment, getting all the parts. Whereas like software, one SKU, you sell it, then it's all like pure profit. The more seats you sell, where you don't have to deal with all the loss or the price drop, you know, in the cycle of seasons where you start to like push back on your profit. So then there's a lot of stress in selling hardware, and selling software is really chill.
Yeah. And that's why people want to be in software, right? So in hardware, you have marginal cost. Every unit is about like, hey, I made 10% on this, but in software, every additional license that I sell costs me 0. So that's also part of the reason if y'all decide to get into software sales, then like people discount crazy amounts because it doesn't matter. At one tech company that I worked in, people discounted like 40% all of the time, fundamentally because it doesn't, revenue, money is money, right? So cool.
Also, when you mentioned the features in Microsoft, actually, I'm happy to see that Microsoft, actually, GitHub is following us by, like, for example, in the, I don't know, past year, they made their private repos free. They created GitHub Actions with CI and everything. So kind of we're the leaders right now, and the rest is following. So that seems good.
Yeah, it's definitely, we have an advantage over them in terms of our tech, and we need to grab up all that market share before they catch up. Because if Microsoft wants to spend more money on building out GitHub, then they will, right? So yeah, thanks for that thought. I think that's really important to know. Cool. All right, so standing out. This is a traditional storefront. If you brought a kid past this storefront, so like if I own this store, then this is probably my most major cost as a business. And it's something that I think a lot about. So where do I put this store in town? I want to make sure that it's a place that is a cool part of town. And I want to make sure that this store looks and invites in the kind of people that I want in my business, right? So as you can see, I'm probably trying to attract families and children. So what do they have here? They have all these sorts of cool flowers. They have really colorful display. The entire store looks really beautiful and inviting. It's the same thing with the e-business. So if Amazon.com, if their front page isn't as attractive and user-friendly as some other website, then that's going to be 10, 20, 30% difference in sales between them having a really easy to use user interface and them having a bad user interface. And this is things that technology companies, they talk about. Almost all of, you know, every single thing that they do, they hire all of these psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists that study human psyche. And they basically just try to figure out, how can I maximize sales? What's the color scheme that's as inviting as possible? Where should I put this search widget? Where, you know, everything is literally thought out down to the letter, paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to basically just figure out, like, how can I make this a revenue driving machine? So there's a lot of thought that goes into this. Amazon.com this year is making around $300 billion. And so the difference between this being somewhat friendly and this being really friendly, it's worth it for them to hire a bunch of sociologists and psychologists to analyze like human behavior and come up with like the best and most efficient you know, website. If like me improving that by 4% for $300 billion is literally $12 billion difference, right? And other things that they take into consideration is that, like, in the United States, there's different groups of people. So you have Asian Americans, you have Jewish Americans, you have, you know, Caucasian Americans, you have African Americans. So it's like they bring in sociologists and they analyze each people group and figure out, how can I like make them, how can I make this appealing to each people group? So there's a lot of thought that goes into this. So in terms of features, I'm going to pick on Amazon for a bit. Their basic functionality 10 years ago, just go buy stuff, right? You searched in like, I want this book, I want this like tool, I want a wrench. But what are they building out, right? Their whole plan is to just dominate almost the entire virtual market. So now they sell like really cool craft things with Etsy. They sell groceries with Whole Foods. They sell entertainment with Prime Video, smart home, even gaming, right? So they own Twitch. But this entire thing is just sort of like, let's go gobble up more market segments. Let's make our business like appeal to everyone in every single like market. And so this is just an example of if someone, their e-business, they're expanding their features, and by expanding their features, they're now expanding their revenue. So that's why they pay their engineers as much as they do. So let's talk about user experience with Tumblr. Have y'all used Tumblr before?
Oh yeah.
I haven't.
Okay, so Tumblr is this really awesome like image site. And as you can see, everything's like, their target audience for this is like, I'd say like artists and, you know, like hipsters and stuff like that. But as you can see, everything here is built for that target audience. Everything's beautiful, colorful, right? If I scroll down, it's interactive. Everything's cooling up, super cool and fast, right? So all that is to say is that to build this out, they've analyzed human nature, their target audience, exactly what their target audience is looking for. And they've done like, honestly, like psychological studies to figure out how can I make this website appeal as much as possible to my target audience. So that's what we're talking about in terms of user interface, is making, this is their virtual storefront, right? If I had this virtual storefront over here, I'm thinking about where do I place these pictures? Where do I, you know, like how can I make it as inviting as possible? They're thinking this exact same thing with this website. And the stakes are much higher, right? So this store might make gross revenue of $200,000 a year. Tumblr makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, right? So it matters way more for this website, but it's something that people don't think about, right? All right, so that's user experience, speed. Pinterest. Y'all have Pinterest in Europe and Canada? I just want to make sure I'm not doing American stuff for everything. Okay. So Pinterest increased signups by 15% after it reduced wait times by 40%. And if your business is $100 million, then having plus 15% customers, that's a really big deal to you, right? So like, you know, in terms of, and also for a really competitive market, if I can increase new customers by additional 15%, then that's something that I really care about. And this is an engineering problem, reducing website load times by 40%. The British Broadcasting Corporation found that they lost 10% of users, which are fundamentally their customers, for every additional second their website took to load. So basically what that means is that if this website takes 3 seconds to load, if that changes to 4 seconds, I lose 10% of my customer base. It's a really big problem for some websites. Google found that 53% of mobile website visits were abandoned. So people are just like, I don't want to look at this anymore. I'm going to go look at something else. 53% if a site took longer than 3 seconds to load. So it's a huge problem for some of these people. As you can see, this is the annual financials for Amazon.com. Last year, they made $300 billion. So for this e-business, what's the difference for having 15% more signups or something like that? It's a huge amount of money. And so that's why all of these tech companies pay all these engineers as much money as they do to optimize their business. And once again, like just going back a couple of slides, this is their virtual storefront. Every single thing for this store owner was planned out, thought, the color scheme, everything. And it's the exact same thing with these e-businesses, except the stakes are way higher. Amazon, their difference between them having, you know, something that's colorful, not colorful, maybe 5%, maybe 10%. But if they're making $300 billion, then that's $30 billion, right? So it matters a lot to them, which is why they do so many psychological studies and come up with engineers that build things off of these psychological studies. Most of our customers aren't this smart, in all honesty, but like this is like fundamentally how the space works. When you're talking to a mid-market customer or someone who has like a smaller business, then they want to do these things. They understand that this is the value and where they want to go. So I wouldn't dive into like, hey, have you done like in-depth user studies with all of your customers and whatever, but they understand that that's where they want to go because those are the leaders. Okay. I know that was a lot of information. What do y'all think about what I've been sharing before I dive into like some of the hardware stuff?
So far, so good. I really like how you compare and show the numbers. and compare that with percentages of incomes and everything. I really like to learn those informations. So yeah, thanks so far.
Cool. All right, cool. Well, if there's no additional questions, I'll keep going. So how's all this stuff work, right? So every website, every sort of like database, it's got to be some sort of computer somewhere that's running YouTube, running Amazon.com, running Facebook. And so these computers are called servers. They get stacked up in gigantic rows. So over here, each rectangle thing over here is one server. And then this entire vertical unit, this is called a rack. And so that's the backbone of the internet. That's the backbone of YouTube. That's the backbone of every single like major, you know, this is my e-business. If I had an e-business like Amazon.com, these are the machines that run my e-business. And these servers are stored in these gigantic buildings called data centers. And as you can see, this is a new data center under construction. And things that you notice over here is one, there's no windows. Two, it almost looks like, it looks really not inviting, right? And the reason why is because they don't want people coming in here. If Google or Amazon had people sneaking into their data centers and stealing customer data, then now they have a lawsuit for several $billion, right? So a lot of these are maximum security compounds. To get into a Google data center, you have to go through like 3 layers of security. So you go to a front desk, you sign in, then they like scan your eyes and then take your fingerprints and stuff. And then you literally have to, it almost feels like you're going through like a FBI like interrogation thing. But once again, like if they had a breach, that'd be instantly $1 billion loss. Credibility loss is tens of billions of dollars. It can never happen. That's why there's so much security. And so that's all built into the data center itself. Here's a map of the data centers of the United States. And as you can see, they're mostly around major metropolitan areas. So New York City over here, there's a lot near Washington, DC. There's a lot near like Dallas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, there's a lot. And the reason why is because we talked about how speed matters for my e-business a lot, right? So Google found that over 50% of, you know, website visits were abandoned if it was after, I think, 4 seconds. And so from an engineering perspective, I got to have my servers close to my customers, right? So if I live in Raleigh and the Amazon servers are only in Seattle, then my computer has to send a network request all the way to Seattle. That takes like a long time. Then I get a response, and then it sends like, you know, something back. And then so that could be 3 seconds, that could be 5 seconds. And so that's not acceptable for these big players. So for any sort of large major web service, so Netflix, Amazon, whatever, then they distribute it across the entire planet. And so that's why there's data centers all over the place. Do y'all know what cloud computing is? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm gonna just like review this real quick since you already know. It's basically just renting someone else's server, and I'll tell you the story behind it because I think that that's important. And I'll also talk about why auto scale matters. And this isn't just information for information. This is something that GitLab can do, and this is part of our value prop. So let me go here. All right, can you guys see? Can you all see this screen?
Yes.
All right, so here's, and forgive me, I might need a couple of seconds to get this working. Like my screen's really confused right now. All right, I might have to abandon this patch, but all right, so here's a graph. Y-axis is like compute, so number of servers, and then this is just time. So January, February, March, June, July, November, December. And this is Amazon. All right, so this is the amount of compute that they have, right? So number of like machines that they have. So before the cloud, then this is the amount of web traffic load that they have. January, February, people are bored, so they're visiting Amazon a lot. Then spring happens, everyone goes outside, they don't want to buy so much stuff. Summer, it's hot again, so people are buying more stuff. this is back to school in the United States. So a lot of parents are buying their stuff for their kids. And then towards Christmas, there's like a spike, right? And right over here towards Christmas, they might get 30% of their sales, right? So if I'm Amazon, I know, and I'm smart enough that I got to have web traffic, web servers to be able to handle the highest level here. And I also need to build in some buffer, right? So if this is my expected peak usage, then I'm going to build server capacity for this level. And this is now just extra buffer space, right? But the problem with this is that for the rest of the year, all of this like compute capacity here is just wasted. And I have servers that are sitting around not doing anything. And so Amazon was smart, and they basically said, well, if we have all these computers lying around, why don't we just sell this capacity? And then so Amazon created the first public cloud, and what they did was very smart. They said, we got all these extra computers lying around for all of the year, except for, maybe, close to Christmas. So why don't we sell that compute capacity? And that's how Amazon created the public cloud. So they're the first mover in this industry. As you can see over here, Amazon has around 1/3 the market share. And that's the reason why is because they have first movers advantage from a business perspective. But from what we really care about is the ability to auto scale applications. So just going back over here, if you're a traditional business that doesn't use the public cloud, then my thought got stuck. Then like you have excess capacity, right? So it might not be near November and December. Your e-business might be for soccer, but you might be selling soccer stuff. And then so your sales is going to be really high during the soccer season. And then in the off season, then less people visit your website, right? But bottom line is that you're always going to have like servers that aren't utilized. And so when you're using someone else's servers, you can spin up and spin down your capacity so that you're only paying for what you need. And how GitLab can help with that is that GitLab itself can spin up and down. So you don't have servers that are lying around not doing anything. I know that was a lot of information. Is that clear? Like, does that make sense?
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So like Amazon was the first to start, and then there's these like capacity. So like if people's demand during December is so high, then like I guess there is sort of a cap there. And then I guess that was like the initial business design because they have like the excess capacity. But then like to meet the demand of December, I imagine they eventually like scaled up so that they can meet all the demands coming in.
That's a really great question. So obviously it's not unlimited, right? I can't, if I'm Microsoft, I can't crash. Amazon's not going to let me crash their service by like getting all of their server capacity, right? So as an engineer, I actually used all of these cloud providers right here. And what they do is they basically say, you can get a maximum of 20 servers. If you want more than 20 servers, then you have to request them. And then there's some application you have to fill out. And so that's how Amazon protects themselves during like, November, December, when they get so much web traffic.
Okay, gotcha. And the other question, like when you said like we can scale up and down, do you mean that we have Kubernetes monitoring to help monitoring whatever space they're renting? What do you mean that we can help them?
Yeah, that's something that like I didn't explain super well. So GitLab is fundamentally a web service, and so there's a bunch of servers that run GitLab. If you want, you can have GitLab running in one of these public cloud providers. And excuse me. And for many of them, not all of them, you can have like GitLab just scale up, scale down according to the amount of work that you have running in GitLab.
Okay. And when they're doing SaaS, which is using GitLab with our servers, like how does the performance like differ? Like I know it's like less maintenance. It's more like we update the software and all of the infrastructure, we take care of it. So like is there is there more complication? Say they put GitLab on an Amazon Web Service. There's like they're trying to meet their demand in like November and December, but there's a cap. So do we offer better service, you know, with SaaS, GitLab SaaS?
That's a really great question. I hate to dodge it because it kind of depends. So if I have self-hosted GitLab and I install it on some server that's really like really old, then that performance is going to be really bad. If I install GitLab on like 20 really high capacity servers and I have a small team, then GitLab's going to run really well if it's self-hosted. So we can't do like a generic apples to apples comparison between the SaaS and self-hosted, just because in self-hosted, it's really up to the customer to create their own environment, and they can create it really robustly and they can also create it poorly.
Okay.
We want the SaaS to be really good though, and performance should not be impacted ever by something like, you know, Christmas. So that's like part of our like objectives for building out a SaaS. It's the same thing where it's just sort of like, this is how we make money, right? So if the developers have slow load times and things like that, then that eats into our value proposition.
Yeah. That's why I always find it like surprising that we charge the same for SaaS or on-prem. Like I would just go with SaaS, right? Like unless there's like confidential proprietary stuff that you're scared to put on there. But if we have like FedRAMP or like ISO, then I feel like people are like feel safe about it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Any other thoughts, or I'll keep going? Cool. Thanks for asking questions. All right, so we talked about the application side of things. Let's dive into the data side of things. And there's different types of data, right? So there's user data with people, and then there's also other types of data like geographic data and things like that. Let's talk about people data first. So everything that you do is locked, tracked, and the reason why is because marketers care about your information, right? We care about the information of the people that are on our website. We want to know who they are. We want to know where they work for. And then all of that stuff goes into how we do outbound, right? And then so what Google and some of these other companies do is they get all of your data. They see what you're looking at. You know, if you're looking at like an engagement ring, then all of a sudden that data is sold to other businesses, and all of a sudden you have advertisements for like wedding stuff, because your data is worth money to someone else. With things, this is basically if I create something like Google Maps that has data on the entire planet, I have traffic data, I have you know, data on now like restaurants and things like that, then I can sell this data to another website so that they can use it for you know, their service. And so all of that takes what we call APIs. I'll show you what an API is. And all of this data is stored in databases. So let's actually talk about some of this stuff first. So this is Yelp. Do y'all have Yelp in Canada and Europe?
I believe so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Yelp is basically just like a site in which you can rank restaurants and like plumbers and electricians and things like that. This is a restaurant that is close to my house. And as you can see over here, what we actually have in Yelp is Google Maps. So how did we get Google Maps inside of Yelp, right? So there's got to be some sort of business agreement between these services. And the answer is Google Maps understands, hey, I got all this data. Why don't I make this data available for sale for other businesses and just charge them money? And that's exactly what they're doing. So this is Google Cloud. As you can see over here, hey, if you want my maps and routes and all this other stuff, then, you know, there's different pricing tiers, right? So for every 1,000 times this map is displayed, then if you want the basic package, it's going to cost you $2. If you want the more advanced package, it's going to cost $7. And so literally every time Yelp is you know, displaying Google Maps data, then Google is charging them money for this. And that is part of their e-business. This is one of the things that like isn't as like understood because it happens all behind the scenes. But part of the reason why Google wants all of this information on user data and market data and geospatial data, like you have to imagine that they probably spent like hundreds of millions of dollars of building Google Chrome, which is something that they give away for free, right? There's zero cost for Google Chrome. But the reason why is they want all of this data now that they can sell. And this is an example of how they can sell this data. So that's how Google Maps is part of Yelp. And all of this works by APIs. So this is GitLab. This is the handbook site. And as you can see, how all of this data share works behind the scenes is you need something called an API. And so what an API is it's an alternative version of your website. This is gitlab.com for the handbook page. This is the alternative API endpoint for what we were just looking at. And so as you can see, it says the exact same information. So over here, project ID is 7764. ID is 7764, right? Source description, source for about.gitlab.com. Project is for public facing marketing website of GitLab, including improvements around the docs and handbook. If I go here, source for gitlab.com, about, and repro project is for public facing marketing websites, including docs and the handbook. So it's saying the exact information. If I wanted to build an integration with gitlab.com, I would use this information and not this information. So that's the API allows me to do this. Every single major website, we want other people, other e-businesses to use our data because that's how we make money. Facebook has an API, Twitter has an API, Amazon has an API. Every single one of these major players, they have APIs. Why? It's basically just like increasing your visibility for your e-business, right? So the reason why Google wants to be here is one, I get money directly, but two, you know, I'm increasing just knowledge of Google Maps, which is also good for me as well. Do you have a question, man?
Yeah. So is it the same with APIs for logins? Because everybody, Facebook, Apple, Google, everybody want to have their like way of login to any application. So they're providing those APIs. So other applications, other companies can use their APIs and everybody receives information, logs in without signing up and stuff like that. So it's kind of the same, right?
Can you rephrase that question? I don't feel like I understood.
I mean, you explained how API at GitLab works. So it's kind of the same for login APIs because I can see Facebook login or Google login into within any application. So that's also the API in some way, right?
Yeah, so if you want to log into an API, then there's a way to do it. And it basically, there's usually more ways of doing it than if you're using like the regular version of the website. I think I answered your question. If I didn't, then let me know.
Yeah. That's it. All good.
Okay, cool.
I have a question. Is API more than just sort of the other format of what we see of the web page? For example, it's more about the interaction of like requesting, and then that request turns into like connecting to a service. Is that what API really is?
An API is an alternative version of a website that is built for integrations. And the reason why is because if I want to scrape off this data, then there's a lot of graphical assets on here. Graphical assets, images, videos, whatever, that's a lot of space. So if I look at the API endpoint, I'm just getting text. And so it's way faster for me to get this than it is for me to get this. You can usually do more with an API than you can with the website itself. So if I can do X, Y, and Z with, you know, these buttons and stuff like that, then traditionally speaking with the API, I can do X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C. I can do even more.
Okay. So from like a normal customer like me, like when I want to George was saying, like, if you need to log into something, a service or whatnot, what would be a real life application for me API? Because what I see is all like web pages, and like what is the advantage of an API for like a normal person like us?
Yeah. So if I wanted to integrate some sort of like thing like not Jenkins, but like if I want to integrate, so like developers, they have all these tools, right? So I have GitHub, I have Artifactory, I have Jenkins, I have all these other things. If I want these things to talk to each other in some sort of automated way, then I'm going to be using the API to talk to this thing. So let's just say that like I'm going to push code to GitLab, and then I want GitLab to then talk to Jenkins to go run this thing. And I also want it to go update my Artifactory stuff when it's done. Then all of that is going to be APIs talking to other APIs.
Okay. So it's more like behind the scene where we're just kind of the end user of it. We don't really know what's designed behind it. We just kind of look at the logic of the web page to kind of go with it.
For the vast majority of people, using the web page is just fine. It's only when you really want to integrate web services together that you look at the API.
Okay.
Sorry, one more thing. I think that's it. But so, for example, we have mirroring feature. Like if you want to mirror repositories from GitLab to GitHub or vice versa,
Yep.
There's basically an API in between, which is used to as an integration to move all the data in between, right? I mean, API is used for that kind of communications between those two platforms.
There would be an API request in which GitLab would talk to GitHub and basically, get those services to talk to each other so that you can mirror that those files and things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I also have another question. So like when you're saying earlier, like Google noticed like if the web page loading time is way slower, then people lose, interest and then they just go somewhere. So is it a lot based on API efficiency, like how well it is talking to each other and then leading you to the right place? Is it like a lot of times a struggle being API?
APIs are faster than the website in general. And yeah, it's like if I'm the amount of like, so every web request fundamentally I'm downloading stuff, right? I'm downloading this icon, I'm downloading this text, and then finally it's displayed on like my browser. The amount of like things that I need to download to go here is about, I'd say like 30 times more than the amount of stuff that's here, maybe even 100 times more. In general, like you want to have API requests because they're generally pretty fast. They're not going to be your bottleneck for most things.
Okay. So like basically they just runs in the background for whatever like an end user like me, I'm browsing some websites and then I'm trying to do something and then the API is talking in the background. And yeah, so what are really the struggles for websites to load really slowly? Is it mostly server efficiency?
That's like a really deep question. That's like saying like, why am I out of shape? It could be that like, hey, you're not working out. It could be that like, yeah, it could be that I'm watching too much TV. I couldn't be eating right. Maybe I smoke, right? Like, there's the same sort of analogous things for why our website's performing and not performing. And it's really complicated and really deep. There's these guys called performance engineers, and they get paid like a ton of money to basically figure out what the bottleneck in my like web application is. I'm sure that Google and all these other like massive, this is what they care about, right? So they hire people with master's degrees from Ivy League colleges to basically figure out how they can make their website faster because they know that's part of their comparative advantage.
Cool. Gotcha. Thanks.
Chris, just another question also from me about APIs. So we usually say that we have specific integrations for things like Jenkins and GitHub and Jira, and we connect with everything else through APIs. Is this kind of correct, the way I put it? Or?
You can literally have anything connect with GitLab through our API. So our API has built-in stuff for Jenkins and GitHub that makes it easy. So Yeah, but if you wanted to create your own web application and talk to GitLab, you would use our API integration there, and then you could use our API for that. So yeah.
Okay, understood. Cool. Thank you.
Cool. All right, yeah, we got 10 minutes left. Let me try to just, jump through some of this stuff real quick. All right, so APIs are how applications talk to each other. If anyone ever asked you this, it's another version of a website. And why we have this is so applications can talk to each other. If I'm an e-business, the reason why I want this is because one, I'm selling my data, which gives me money directly. And two, I'm increasing my market share, right? So if people go to Yelp, they see Google Maps, this increases the visibility of Google Maps. And that matters a lot for me too. So that's why people want to have APIs. Yeah, virtually every major application is a consumable API. And the reason why is because we want to make money off of our data, and we want our product, our tool, to be as extensible as possible. So we talk about like tool chain tax at GitLab a lot, right? So if you have all of these tools, then that's a problem because you have too many tools. But imagine if you had one tool that didn't work with all of the other stuff. So imagine if GitHub didn't talk to Jenkins and didn't talk to like Artifactory, then like the usefulness of GitHub is like way less now. So that's another reason why people want to have APIs. All right, the technology race. This is something that like I was an engineer for about half a decade. I can speak to this personally. I have a friend that I was hanging out with last night who's a nurse practitioner. So she went to school, became a nurse, then she spent 2 more years, and then she became a nurse practitioner, right? So I saw her go through all of her school. She had to go read all of these textbooks. She had to read like 2,000 pages a semester and learn the human body really, really well. In technology, the big problem with it is that it's just changing so fast, and the rate of change is only getting faster. So in other words, what I mean by that is like, if I had a web application 20 years ago, I'm pushing out updates every 3 months. Now people are talking about, I need to push out updates every single day, right? And there's all of these crazy new things. Blockchain's one, big data is one, public cloud's one, microservices is one, and all of these things are all fundamentally game changing. If my competitors are using these things and I'm not, then they are going to be ahead of me in 3 years. And the problem is that like all of these things are completely new. And it's really hard to navigate all of this new stuff. My friend who is a nurse practitioner, like she spent, let's just say like 3,000 hours studying the human body. Now she can work as a nurse practitioner, but the human body doesn't change, right? So she needs to learn new medication and stuff, but fundamentally like her skill set is good for the rest of her life. For engineers, your skill set is going to be completely obsolete in 3 years. That's it. If I have Amazon.com right now, if I'm not changing it, if I'm not updating it, it's going to be, let's talk about all of these things. In terms of features, that depends on where your competition's at. But Lyft and Uber, they're pushing out new features all the time. If Amazon does not push out new features, then someone else is going to take their market share. User experience. User experience really depends on your audience, right? And your audience is changing all the time. In terms of speed, obsolete in 1 year, maybe. In terms of security, your new vulnerabilities happen every single day. So almost all technology companies, they feel behind. We talk about how like Twitter and all these other companies, they're doing digital transformation, but 90% of all of our customers know that they are not disrupting anything, and they're just like struggling to keep up with all of these things here. That's what it's like to be an engineer. That's what it's like to be in tech. And we're creating this pressure for our competitors too, like CloudBees, people like that. They know that we are, the amount of features that we push out, that probably keeps them up at night, you know? So where does GitLab fit in? And this is basically the takeaway point. GitLab, so I was an engineer. I used Jenkins for about 4 years. I used GitHub for about 5 years. I probably spent around 50% of all of my day on these tools. And I can speak about this like personally. GitLab is an extremely powerful suite of tools that allows customers to get ahead of their competitors. This is our fundamental value proposition that we bring. We understand that you feel behind with your features. We understand that you have problems with security and all of these other things. And it's just part of the reason why it's just really, really, really hard. But with GitLab, this can be part of your strategic strength that allows you to deliver value to your customers and get ahead of your competitors. That's our fundamental value proposition. How do we do that? That's command of the message. 3 things is basically all of we do. Everything else really just funnels into this. How? Become more efficient, deliver better products faster, and reduce security risk. I have classes about each one of these. So, you know, definitely in future like iterations, be sure to sign up for exactly what we mean by this. And so that was the slides. We got to talk about homework real quick, just because there's only 4 minutes left and I want to honor your schedule. But this is the homework for our class. Everything is just written response. I have some questions for you. Everything's open-ended. This isn't like the homework that we had before, where I was like, what's a CPU? Which isn't relevant to like what we do here. Every single one of these questions is either something that a customer will ask you or something that will help you understand our space so that you can have a better conversation with our customers. And if it's not, tell me and I'll change it. I really want to be cognizant of your time. So how this works is that there's some questions, fill out the answer. How can GitLab help? We just talked about it, 3 things, right? That's command of the message. So fill it out for me. And I just give this as a standard disclaimer for everyone. It will probably take people several times for it to like to get passed. Why is that? Is because like it's just sort of like fill it out, and I'll probably have some feedback like, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, the wording for this isn't right. And the reason why I'm sort of like, I'm going to be a little bit like nitpicky with you is because as an engineer, if you talk about something in a slightly imprecise way, then that just triggers an alarm in my head that you don't know what you're talking about. And so I really want you all to have really great customer conversations and really be able to talk about all of these things in a way that's going to resonate with your audience. So I'm going to be, I have like a high standard for these responses. So I'm not trying to pick on you if I ask you to do something over again. This is really designed to help you. And at the end, you are tracked for the number of attempts that you take to get everything right. So as you can see over here, Katie Ramos, she got everything right first time for these 2 classes, took her 3 times to get this right. I don't really care, in all honesty. Like, my personal thought in terms of grading is this is your professional development. I really want to help you. And if it's not helpful, let me know. And if this is something that you already know, just bang it out and then I'll give you credit. And like, it's really designed to help you. I'm not like one of those guys that's like trying to be a jerk or whatever. So try to get this done and passed by the end of this week. And knowing that it will take a couple of times probably to get through. So try it in like the next couple of days. I'll probably have some feedback and then we'll iterate and we'll go from there. So yeah, we got only 1 minute left, but I just wanted to say that this is my first class. Thanks for being such a great audience. And let me know what you guys want to hear. And I hope to see you all in a future class.
Yeah, thanks
Awesome.
a lot.
Thank you very much,
I
Chris.
think it's really informative and like more real life, applicability, all that.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, it was really great. And Chris, one question. I see that tomorrow, it's actually evening for me, for class TT100. Is there any other time slot, or it's only 2 p.m. your time? I mean, it's happening only once, right?
It is. I don't know.
Okay, I will try to check it out via the calendar, but yeah, maybe I will have to actually sign off that class because I'm not available tomorrow in my time, but no worries, I will figure it myself.
all the sessions are going to be recorded. I don't force anyone to go to my Zoom sessions. I understand that we're async here. That's something that I honor. So if I should record it. If I don't, then I forgot. But yeah, I took as an action item to go look that up for you, so that you don't have to stay up. I don't want you to be looking at like enablement sessions in your evening.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Do y'all mind if I put this on YouTube, or y'all don't want it on YouTube?
I'm cool.
Can you like block me, like pixelate me or something?
I mean, I don't know.
If you could, that would be awesome. But otherwise, then that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you all for your time. I'll send that homework out basically sometime today. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you all in a future session. Thanks.
Sorry, can you
Awesome.
just send us like questions, because I'm not sure where's that document.
I'm gonna send you as follow-up the slides and the sessions.
Okay.
And yeah, just try to have it in by the end of Friday.
Cool, thanks. Bye.
All right, thanks guys.
Thanks so much.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chris.